Kyotos and good evening, everyone. Welcome to MSBS Weekly Guided Meditation by Phra Goh. Today is 1st December 2020. The time now is 8:31. Since there's a few newcomers, we should run this housekeeping rules quickly. Please display your name for easy identification. Make sure your audio is muted at all times. If you wish to ask a question, you may type your question in the chat box. To ask verbally, you may raise hand, unmute and talk. Please turn off your microphone after finish asking, and one person to speak at one time. During guided meditation, please on your video so Bhante can see your progress, and the meeting room will be locked. We are very fortunate to have with us Bhante Adhibalo, popularly known as Phra Goh. Bhante was born on July 14, 1985. Bhante was ordained under the Thai Dhamma sect at Santi Forest Monastery, Johor, Malaysia in 2008. Bhante is currently the Vice President of Wat Palelai Buddhist Temple, Singapore. We are continuing our Dependent Origination Sutta today. After this, Bhante will be leading the homage to the Buddha and taking a 5 precepts for Buddhists. Now let us compose our mind, put our palms together and welcome Bhante. Over to you, Bhante.
Okay, thank you, Terence, for the introduction. Now we shall do the opening chant. The Vandana homage. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. The 3 refuges. Buddhang Saranam Gacchami. Dhammang Saranam Gacchami. Sanghang Saranam Gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddhang Saranam Gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranam Gacchami. Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranam Gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhang Saranam Gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammang Saranam Gacchami. Tatiyampi Sanghang Saranam Gacchami. And the 5 precepts. Panatipata Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Adinadana Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Kamesu Michachara Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Musavada Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Suramiraya Majapamadatthana Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to the last 3 sessions of this year or this month on dependent origination. So how many sessions have we gone through already? Dependent origination. Maybe like 4 lessons about there. Okay, so this is the 4th lesson. So for the newcomers, just a very quick recap on the various versions on this dependent origination. Actually, this is not meant for beginners because it's a very deep topic. But however, it's considered to be right view. A person with right view needs to know this thing called dependent origination. So it can be summarized into 4 points. So the first one, when this is, that is. Right? From the arising of this comes the arising of that. So this first two is talking about the first two noble truths, and the arising of suffering, that suffering and the arising of suffering. And the point 3 and point 4, when this isn't, that isn't, and from the cessation of this comes the cessation of that. So they talk about the end of suffering and the cessation of suffering. Right? So the last two noble truths. So total 4 noble truths in sum. So we're going to sort of expand what is this, the whole psychological analysis of this suffering. We call it forward order. So number 1, because of the ignorance, then there is number 2, fabrication, conditions fabrication. And because number 2 exists, then number 3 will exist. And because number 3 exists, number 4 will exist, right? So on and so forth. So from consciousness, then there's name and form, and then followed by 6 sense bases, followed by contact, followed by feeling, followed by craving, clinging, becoming, birth, and last one, aging and death. So this is the order from, we call it how suffering, sort of arise. So later on, we talk about the natural progression. So basically 1 to 7, 1 to 7 is like something like a natural kind of natural reflex action. So basically you can't do much about it, right? So what happens is number 8. Number 8 is the man-made suffering, the part where you can put a stop to. So number 8, once you stop craving, which is in line with the 4 noble truths, you end craving and followed by end the suffering. Okay, next. All right, so the reverse order talks about if a person, when after they ended craving and the cessation of suffering, then they'll reach this cessation of ignorance. Right? Once a person is sort of enlightened, then they have no more fabrications. So when fabrications stop, consciousness stop, and consciousness stop, name and form stop, right? Name and form stop, then these 6 sense media cease. I shouldn't use the word stop. I should use the word cease. I think that would be a better terminology. It means different thing to different people. It's not that stop means die. No. Okay. Cessation of contact, then followed by cessation of feeling, craving, and so on and so forth. Right. So this is the reverse order. Okay. Next. So we give the different definitions of these 12 links, right? So we talk about what is aging and death, which is very straightforward. Everybody has aging and death. And 11, what is birth, right? So birth again has a different connotations. It can be the physical birth. And last week during the retreat, somebody asked about devas, unseen beings. How do they practice Buddhism? Do they have the same kind of configuration as we have? So this one is one good example. Some beings have spontaneous birth; they just appear like that, right? So appearance of aggregates. This one also can mean a mental appearance of the aggregates. Like right now, when we are seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, things appear. Things form. All right. Okay. Next. Okay, and number 10 is becoming. Becoming of the becoming basically means existence. When things appear in that way, so you become sensual becoming, or you have this form of formless becoming. You become part of these things. Become part of you, right? So this is becoming, and then clinging. And before becoming is because of clinging. You cling to a certain ideas, right? Sensuality clinging, view clinging, priest and practice clinging, and doctrine and self-clinging. And before clinging, what causes clinging? Because of craving, right? Greed or hatred. We react with greed or hatred with regard to the 6 sense bases. When we see something in greed or hatred, that is a form of craving. So on and so forth with the hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. Okay, next. And what is feeling? So before craving, because of feeling. So this is the feeling part is the natural reflex action. This is the last stop. So we experience something pleasant or unpleasant. And craving is whether we choose to follow or reject. So the following and rejecting part is the self-created kind of craving that causes our mind to be in balance. And so feeling, six senses, all right, and contact is basically when there is your organ, right, the six sense media, and you have the form outside, and when the attention arises from there, right? Let's say you have the eye, you have the form, the screen, right? And then eye consciousness arises. And the meeting of these three things is called contact, right? So this is the definition of contact. So same with the hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking, right? So the thinking will probably, you have an organ that thinks. So in this context, say we have a brain. So for unseen beings, I do not know whether they have a brain. I do not know how they think. So for human beings, they have a brain, or some animals have a brain, and because they have ideas, they think of certain objects, right? All the while we are thinking, but either we pay attention or don't pay attention to it. Right now, all these six senses are, there are things, thousands of stimuli going on, but we may not pay attention to them. Like for example, our heart may be beating, but we don't notice it, right? So likewise, our brain is thinking every time it's thinking, but if we do not pay attention to thoughts, then it's not there. Right? If let's say you're paying attention to what I'm talking, then you're paying attention to what I'm talking. Let's say I'm talking, but you're daydreaming. Then you're paying attention to your thoughts and not paying attention to what I'm speaking. So this is the function of this contact. Yeah, when there's attention arises, then there's this contact. Okay, next. Okay, so the name and form is basically the five aggregates. So they call Nama Rupa, the Pali word. So name is basically the mental. This translation. There are different translations to a name and form. Some people call it mind and matter. Or some people translate as mentality, materiality, right? So there are many kinds of terms. So name is mind. So there is feeling, perception, intention. And this attention, that would be mind, and form is basically you can call it as contact, or the four elements, right? Four great elements. So this is the material aspect: earth, fire, wind, water. That is the four great elements. Okay, and what is consciousness? And this consciousness is basically our awareness. So if we're not aware, our paying attention to what we are seeing, then there's no eye consciousness. If you're not paying attention to what we're hearing, then there's no ear consciousness, so on and so forth. Okay, next. Okay, so fabrication comes before this consciousness, and interestingly, fabrication is under name and form. Right? So basically, this whole dependent origination may not be in a linear order. Yeah? Okay, so some people call it karmic formations. So in the previous series on karma, we talked about the different formations, bodily, verbal, and mental fabrications. And the last one, which is the first root problem, is this ignorance, not knowing all these Four Noble Truths, right? Basically how to end this suffering. Okay, next. So we talk about the practical aspect, method 1. So in practice, this is how the dependent origination is applied. Okay, so we talk about the formation of the world, origination of the world, and ending of the world. Not in the literal sense, but in the, we talk about the mental world, your world, my world, that kind of world. Yeah? Okay, next. Right, so the same order. So it comes from depending on I and forms that arises I consciousness. The meeting of the three is contact. So this is the definition of the three, how these sense media and the object outside, how they interact, right? And this consciousness. Okay. And so on and so forth. So basically it's the same as the 12 we mentioned before. Okay, next. Next slide. Okay, so ending of the world, what is the difference? Okay, so basically from depending on your sense organs, right, and contact and feeling, and then we have this thing called craving. So if you look at the mid portion of the statement, the bold statement, right, the bold letters, from the remainderless cessation or and fading away of the very craving, then you end clinging. So without clinging, then there's no becoming and no suffering. Okay, so basically this is the first method we've talked about. So this is this is how the suttas present most of the dependent origination, how it's applied in the practical sense. Right. So next slide. Okay, so last week, or the previous session, the most recent previous session, we talked about the post canonical interpretation on the dependent origination, where they break up into three lifetimes. So we talk about why three, right? You look at the center of the circle, there's three pie, the three segments of the pie. So they talk about past, present, and future. So the past is the first two links, ignorance and activities, avidya and sankhara. So they call this the past life. So that is the sankhara is basically the karma from your previous life. And the present life, why they break up into three is because they interpret consciousness as this thing called rebirth linking consciousness, pati santi vijnana. So number three. So this one is very different from the original 12 links formula, where they just talk about a six sense basis consciousness, whereas this is a totally new term called rebirth linking consciousness. So they're introducing this new concept called rebirth into the 12 links, right? And basically number 3 to number 7, number 3 to number 10, they call it the present life. And once you are done with the present life, then there's another life called the future. There's another birth and death. So they break up into three lifetimes. So after death, then these so-called consciousness, our ignorance, based on this good or bad karma, take rebirth again into a womb, which they call rebirth linking consciousness. And the womb is called mind matter, or mind and body. So the womb, the baby, the fetus is called the body, the matter, and the consciousness is the mind. So that's how they interpret it. So it goes round and round and round. So this is the modern post-canonical interpretation. So if you are to study Buddhism, whatever course, diploma, degree, you have to take this version. This is the most probably they present this version of the dependent origination. Okay, next. So to be fair, I will present both cases. Yeah. So this is the case for rebirth linking consciousness. So this is also, you can find it in the suttas, in the original scriptures. So it's found in Digha Nikaya at the end, called the Maha Nidana Sutta. So there's a portion, right? There's a portion where the Buddha talked about, from consciousness as a requisite condition comes name and form. Right, so we talked about this in the previous session also. So the example they give, right, towards the end of the first paragraph. If consciousness were not to descend into the mother's womb, would the name and form take shape in the womb? So the Buddha is asking a question to this venerable Ananda. That Ananda said, no, Lord. And the Buddha asked again, if after descending into the womb, consciousness were to depart, would name and form be produced for this world? And Ananda said no. And the Buddha asked again, if the consciousness of the young boy or girl were to be cut off, would name and form ripen, grow, and reach maturity? No, Lord. right? Okay, so if you are to take this literally, and sometimes it's got to do with interpretation. So some schools will take this as this is the consciousness that is part of dependent origination, right? And for my case, I would interpret it as the Buddha is giving an example. Right from the start of life, when there's conception, right? Then this consciousness and this name and form will operate. Without this life, without the starting of life, then this name and form will not operate, will not exist, right? So, for example, if let's say there is, how do you call it, a fertilization taking place after a couple is had their intercourse, and if let's say there's no consciousness, the fetus is there's no awareness, then it would be considered a stillborn, right? A stillborn, considered dead baby, right? So this is what it's meant. So similarly, if we are alive and right now at our current age, can be 20s or 30s or 40s or older, if our consciousness depart, that means we are no more aware, the awareness is lost, then we are as good as dead. So it doesn't have to be from the womb only. Yeah? So it applies throughout the rest of the life. But for this case, the Buddha has given an example right at the beginning of life. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is the new content we are talking today. So in the same scripture, the Buddha defined consciousness as 7 stations of consciousness. Okay, in this same Digha Nikaya 15. So what is this consciousness the Buddha is talking about, right? So aside from what we see here, smelting, taste, and touch, these are the different, we call it latitude, or the different doors, and there is also a different spectrum of altitude, different quality of consciousness. So the first one is the sense desire kind of consciousness. You can find commonly in the human, some devas and some beings in the lower realm. So this is the first station. Second, onwards is the different jhanas, yeah? Different levels of concentration, basically. So the different deities that associated with the different levels of concentration. Okay, next. Okay, so so in how to apply. So we talk about the practical method. Okay, so the Buddha is mentioning, right? Bhikkhus, that means monks. There are these 3 elements of escape. So what 3? So the escape from sensual desire, that is renunciation. So escape from sensual desire is the first station of consciousness. Okay, and escape from form, that is, so to then, if a person escapes sensual desire, they will enter form. Right? And if they want to escape form, they need to go to the formless, right? And the escape from whatever has come to be, from whatever is conditioned and dependent horizon, that is cessation. So eventually, the Buddha is giving a step-by-step methodology to escape and reach this cessation. It's not like one time from a beginner, untrained, ordinary being, you want to talk about, nibbana, liberation, emptiness, sunyata, straight away. No, there's steps involved. So these are the 3 elements of escape. And next. So you can confer with the Buddha's post-enlightenment kind of exercise. After he got enlightened, in the first week he was according to some stories, he was like staring at the tree, staring at the Bodhi tree. But what is he doing when he's staring at the Bodhi tree? He's contemplating on the forward and reverse order of the dependent origination. And the Buddha mentioned, uttered this verse, as phenomena grow clear to the Brahman, ardent in jhana, his doubts all vanish when he discerns a phenomenon with its cause. So the Buddha attribute jhana to dependent origination. It's called the Bodhi Sutta. You can find it in this scripture. Okay, so next. Okay, so this model comes from this the late Venerable Dr. Punaji. Late Venerable Dr. Punaji. He came up with this model. I'll try my best to explain. It looks very complicated. Okay, so on the left column, right, he has some different we call translation of the term. Yeah? So avijja, he called it complete unconsciousness. That means we are ignorant of the truth. We do not know the Four Noble Truth. And number two means mental construct. We call it sankharas. And number three, vijnana. He called it perception. So he has a different term. Yeah? But nevertheless, the middle column is talking about when a person, let's say they descend from jhanas. Total, we talk about there are 8 jhanas, right? 8 levels of concentration, from the first concentration all the way to 8th concentration, which is called the realm of neither perception nor non-perception. They call it neither sensation nor non-sensation. This is his translation. Okay, and beyond that, there's a 9th level called cessation. That means if a person experiences nibbana, so it can be a temporary experience of cessation or a complete cessation. So if let's say a person, sometimes they attribute a stream enterer as experiencing this nibbana of cessation for a short while, a glimpse of nibbana. Okay, so they may or may not do the all these jhanas, yeah. And okay, so if let's say a person practice this jhana method, right? They practice from 1 to 8, and they're able to break through and reach this cessation. So imagine if a person is still alive, and they reach number 9, cessation, and they want to come out. So the Buddha's practice is always to go to the reverse order, from 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So this is the sequence on how he sum up the forward order. So imagine if a person has cessation, it's like refreshing the computer or rebooting your system, right? So you clear your cache, so it's like totally fresh and clean. And the term, he called it sanya vedayita nirodha, cessation of sensation, sanya and feeling, vedana. And let's say from that state of mind, state of emptiness, he wants to come out and reach the formless concentration, and he goes down to this sensation realm of neither sensation or non-sensation. So he starts to come out and experience certain feelings, feelings of forms, sensation and feeling gradually forms. Yeah. And next one, he descends to the 7th level of concentration. It's called the realm of nothingness. So in that state, it's supposed to be, they call it no perception. And if he descends to the next level, below it, it's called the realm of infinite perception. The common term is realm of infinite consciousness. Right. So then, say Vedana Sanya, mental construction is activated. So there's consciousness. And cognitive process of perception resumes. Therefore, awareness of perception arises with no object perceived. So this is the realm of infinite perception according to his write-up. And below, if it descends to another level, then perception of infinite space with no mental image. And so the mind goes into this awareness of infinite space, and there is perception. Okay, next, down. And now the 4th jhana is basically the form realm, and he calls it name and image. Nama, rupa, name and form, because the 4 jhanas is called the form jhanas. So they call this ekagata, one pointedness of the mind, mental image, and feeling and sensation arise. Right. So there's for those who do light nimitta, then they'll see colors and whatever not. And And if it descends, right, then there's happiness, and descends, second level, and there's piti, sukha, ekagata, and first jhana, vitaka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekagata, more thought processes. So inference and inquiry arise with the formation of concepts, nama, and images. So yeah, this is his write-up. And if he goes down, comes out of concentration, that means he enters the sensual realm. Okay, next. Okay, so if it comes out of concentration, then the mind is actively engaged in the six senses. Because if a person is doing concentration, they're supposed to withdraw from the senses. They're supposed to ignore all the sense contact. All right, so once they come out and they can start to experience what you hear, see, smell, hear, think, taste, and touch, right? The six sense realms. And you have sense experience, contact, asa, and followed by feeling, right? Which is your pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feeling, and followed by tanha. We call it emotional arousal. That means our reaction, right? So we call this kama tanha, bhava, and vibhava tanha. Basically, it's greed, delusion, and this hatred, aversion. So this is our experience. Okay, next. And followed by upadana, clinging. And he calls it dichotomy of experience into subjective and objective. Subjective, upadana, personalized, and objective, anupadana, is alienated. Okay, so it becomes, how do you call it? The common term is called clinging. He calls it personalization, right? That means it becomes yours. Huh? Okay, and 10 is called bhava. So it interprets existence. So body and experience of the body becomes the self. It becomes a sense of I, sense of self. Being, self-atta in the world, existence, thinking, space and time are products of existential thinking. So again, to further complement his explanation of bhava, I would like to use this French philosopher Descartes. Probably like a few hundred years ago, he came up with this popular quote, "I think, therefore I am." The philosophy of existence. I think, therefore I am. Because of thinking, then therefore the I exists. So very simple, right? So a few hundred years ago, this philosopher came up with something, but 2,500 years ago, the Buddha came up with something more profound, the dependent origination, and it's more complicated, more steps, more technicalities. Okay, and followed by birth, jati, right? Memory, created, and aging and death. Right? Because of there's birth and that's why there's death. Okay, so yeah, this is called samsara. So this is his model, his model. But my take on it will be, if you look at this Paticca Samutpada Vibhanga Sutta, the analysis of dependent origination, the jhanas would come under upadana as well, personalization, clinging into form or formless concentration that would fall under clinging, right? So craving and clinging can create this jhanic experience as well. So anyway, this is his interpretation, and the jhana method thus is another way to sort of transcend and overcome this dependent origination. Okay, next slide. Okay, so next week we'll talk about the case against rebirth. Because of the rebirth linking consciousness, right? Some people take this as the number 3rd link of the 12 links of dependent origination, whereas this rebirth linking consciousness might be just the number 11th link. the last one, birth and death, right? The last two links. Rebirth linking consciousness is a process within the 11th link and not the third link. Okay, so we'll talk about this next week. There are many cases against it, but today we just end the theory here and open the floor to questions and answers. All right, anybody?
Check to us.
Yes.
Yeah, because we are in the meditation training, I just want to ask, what is the explanation on going for the cessation?
Okay.
How is the steps? How is the process?
Yeah, cessation is supposed to be the final goal of Buddhists. We call it Nibbana, yeah, it's cessation. And there are many steps, so we've covered in the previous many episodes of this talk. A person can just practice, let's say, Vipassana all the way. There would be one form, yeah, or a person want to do Samatha first and followed by Vipassana, or Vipassana first followed by Samatha, or they combine both Samatha and Vipassana. So this is, there's no straight and one size fit all kind of solution. Yeah. So this is the story from this. You can search in tandem. Yeah, this sutta in tandem. So Venerable Ananda, right? He was interviewing all the arahants, all the enlightened monks, and asked them, "What are your strategies? How you reach enlightenment?" So after interviewing a large sample size, then he gathered. There's generally four groups of people. So the first group, they do samatha first, they do concentration first, followed by some reflection, some insight. Then they reach enlightenment. So this is the first group of monks. The second group of monks, they do the reverse way. They do insight first, followed by making the mind still, then they reach enlightenment. And the third group, they combine both concentration and insight together, and they reach enlightenment. And the fourth group, the fourth group, interesting, is a bit like the Zen, the koan kind of method, where they have doubt. They ask this question, certain question they keep asking. They have certain doubt in the Dhamma. They keep asking until the mind awakens. Yeah. So this is the fourth method. So yeah, so these are the four general kind of strategies used by the Buddha's disciples. Right.
Okay, is it true that if a person can go to the Nirodha or the cessation, then it become a anagam? Is it correct?
No, not necessarily. Cessation happens at any stage, even we call Satipatthana. They have a glimpse of this Nibbana, that is cessation already. Yeah.
And then
this cessation needs to be so-called synchronized, that means familiarized, continuously, like 7 days.
Oh, meaning for 7 days, not moving or anything, just on the cessation state.
That means the mind has to be with that state of themeless concentration for long periods of time. And everybody has different karma. Some people maybe 7 days, some people longer. So in the Satipatthana Sutta, right, they normally mention 7 to 7 years, 7 days to 7 years. So everybody has different speed depending on the obstacles. Yeah.
So in practicality, that the person must be in the cessation state for 7 days.
Yeah, right? Mindful of it continuously.
Mindful of it, meaning it's not moving like
no, not say not moving as in sitting down and no breathing, no seeing, no, not like that. The person can be moving still. For example, this Venerable Sariputta, he got enlightened while fanning the Buddha. Because all the while he's already maintaining mindfulness. And he already, according to this Arūpa-bhava Sutta, the one after the other, that means he already, the Sariputta, can practice all the 8 jhanas already. He already has that, all the first 8 jhanas. So he was already practicing mindfulness. So while fanning the Buddha and listening to the Buddha giving Dhamma talk, right? So the Venerable Satipatthana is listening and contemplating, and he reached enlightenment, and he became an arahant from there. So it's not about closing and stopping. It's not about stop working. Yeah, it's about cessation of a certain desire, cessation of certain craving, certain thought processes. Not all processes. Yeah, certain things still there. Like the heart will still be beating, you'll still be breathing. Certain reflex actions, certain functions will still be there. Right? When we talk about cessation, it's about 3 kinds of craving. Is greed, hatred, and delusion specifically.
So actually, the process can be done in not only meditation, but can also be in the like usual normal activities. Yeah, that's what you're
Yeah,
saying.
as long as we maintain right mindfulness, that would be meditation. Right. So meditation is not about sitting with full lotus, Instagrammable posts, and nice for Instagram or photo cover for certain magazine. No, not like that. Yeah,
So
meditation is
you're
every
saying
moment.
when the venerable just now the venerable
Sariputta, yeah.
Sariputta, right?
Yeah.
Meaning he's going to the 1, 2, 3, 4 until the 8th jhana when he's fanning the Buddha, and then he
Oh,
go
no.
to the state.
He already does these jhanas before that. So when he is fanning the Buddha, he's operating in his normal mode, his sense sphere, yeah, his normal sense. But the mind has the certain equanimity or calm from the various jhanas. So it's operating normally. And he reached cessation with normal operating senses.
Okay, in the practical term, it's level 0.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. Yeah.
Then he just contemplating on the cessation. Then he getting the sense of the cessation. Then he see the nibbana. Then he got enlightened. This
Yeah,
is what.
cessation is an experience where desire is reduced. That is cessation. So when desire reduces, all the formations also reduce. Yeah. So it's contemplating, having right thought to extend where this formation, this desire reduce. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Bante. Thank you.
Okay. Right. No problem. So anyway, the model that I showed you earlier, the 8 jhanas with regard to the dependent origination, that is the late Venerable Dr. Punaji's personal model. He came up with it. Yeah. So I presented it because it's interesting, right? But no, there are certain points which may be arguable, but I have my own disagreements with certain points. But it's just to prove a point that the second method, which is the jhanas, does reach cessation. Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Okay, there's a question from Jean.
Oh yes, Hui Wen, yeah.
Jean wants, I don't know, there's another question, is it from someone else?
Yeah, I give priority to those with video on.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question about the self-identity factor thing that needs to be dropped. So is it like that person has no more ego? Like the ego doesn't pop up at all?
Yeah, self-identity have various levels. Uh, identity view, can be we call it, or personality view can be. I give an example. For example, let's say I am a monk. So there are 2 nouns in the sentence, right? So the first I, the first noun, the I, that is the ego, which is the last factor to be removed. Only an arahant can remove that. And the second, the noun, is the personality. For example, I am a Chinese, or I am a student, I am a teacher, I am a whatever. So that role can be easily overcome by a stream enterer, a Satipatthana, because these change quite frequently. So a person is easier to relinquish or renounce that second noun. So that second noun would be that personality view.
Okay.
Yeah, so like let's say you attend this class, you're a student. After you attend this class, you may be something else. So every moment can change. If you have a different contact, you have a different personality. So if let's say your parents walk into your room right now, then you have a different personality. If you're talking on the phone with your friend, you have a different personality again. Right? So it changes from time to time. So it's easier to let go of that one.
Okay. Can I ask one more question then?
Okay, yeah.
The difference is with the between the conceit is that conceit is like you compare with someone else, right?
Yeah, that would be like the post-canonical explanation. The conceit, according to the Megha Sutta, the conceit would be the sense of I, sense of self. Yeah. And according to the Sutta, the conceit is actually the ego, the I. So it's the first noun of the sentence. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Why do you feel you are you? So this is the final one, the hardest one to overcome. Because this sense of I, this emotion, is there from us since we are young. So it's so real. This is the self is real. So it's the hardest to overcome.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mansi.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so I'm going to look at the chat. So the question from Dean. Good evening, Bhante. I understand practicing samatha meditation and vipassana meditation, but what does it mean to practice jhana meditation? Can jhana help clarify this for me? Okay, jhana is part of samatha. Samatha, there is a very wide definition. That samatha means something like fixing. So that is the general understanding of samatha. So samatha may not lead to jhana depending on how a person do it. So if a person do it, there's certain methodology and certain technique, they do it correctly, then they may enter jhanas, certain relinquishment involved. So this is jhana. So in the Noble Eightfold Path, the number 8, which is right concentration, is defined as the 4 jhanas, first, second, third, fourth jhana. So earlier on, I presented 8, right? 8 jhanas altogether. But 4 is enough. 4 is the minimum requirement for an equanimous mind. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. And Bhante, can a meditator get to a stream entry, Satipatthana, even he didn't reach first jhana? Yes. Or must he go through all stages of jhana? Right, so I've already answered yes. So if a person just does a certain meditation object. Okay, according to the suttas, the Asubha Sutta, if a person were to practice, let's say, a meditation object alone, let's say Asubha meditation, and according to the suttas, Asubha cannot reach jhanas. Right? They just use Asubha as an insight meditation. They practice it the whole day, standing, walking, sitting, lying down. They just visualize the body parts, human biology and anatomy, and reflect on impermanence. They can reach enlightenment. So it is possible without jhanas, a person can reach enlightenment. All right. Okay, any other questions? No, no questions. All okay or blurry. Okay, so if there are no questions from Facebook comments, there's nothing, then we can have a 5-minute break. So now it's 9:20 on my clock. So 9:25, we come back for the guided meditation session. Okay, I am back. All right, so let's see who's returning and settling down. Okay, so yeah, to further answer Jen's question, no, probably Weber Sariputta is no, practicing impermanence until he has we call it vipassana, or this objectless kind of concentration, yeah, objectless kind of samadhi. So because prior to that, he also has all the jhanas, so that he just maintain this peace and maintain a state of peace and calm until the final moment, when he's fanning the Buddha and listening to the Dharma talk until he, his mind just awakened like that, right? So requires lots of this right mindfulness. Okay, so because in this class we don't have time to go through like all the jhana in a very long time, so we're going to do a simple guided meditation exercise. So hopefully you all can follow, and it's easier to take back and practice even in your daily life. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to find a comfortable sitting position. Make sure you're seated upright. And once you're done, relax your body. And you can close your eyes. Okay, and we are going to start off with the routine. The first routine we're doing is the visualization of this human biology and anatomy. Yeah? So what we're going to do is think of the hair. So if, let's say we are not mindful, right? We are not maintaining right mindfulness since the previous session we had. So when we think of something, have any sense contact with anything. So right now it's having sense contact with the mind dog, using our visualization with our mind. Right? So we are seeing our hair with mind. So that will have a personalization, a clinging, and this bhava becomes my hair, and the sense of belonging. This is my hair. So normally we attend to the extremes of greed and hatred. So this hair will be, oh, either this hair is beautiful, so nice, and this would be greed. The other end of the spectrum, the other extreme would be hatred. Oh, this hair is so ugly, I don't like this fashion. Then there will be aversion, hatred. So the mind, when there's this greed and hatred and this sense of delusion, the sense of ego, then the mind will always be suffering. So in practice, the middle way, we are actually trying to do the opposite. So to reduce this aversion, we are going to wish all the hairs well and happy. So before you make it a habit in future, next time when you look in the mirror, right, when you see yourself, wish that body well and happy. So now we start with the hair. May all the hairs be well and happy from the head all the way down the toes. May they be well and happy. Then we counter the other thought of greed. Right. So all these hairs are subject to impermanence, birth and death. So the hairs, they grow long, they get dirty, oily, sweaty, they turn white. When it's dry, it cracks. and eventually they fall off. Every day we have lots of hair falling off. So when there is a cessation of desire, right, then certain symptoms should appear. That means if you're doing it correctly, you should Dhamma joy. And there's a reduction of desire. Some spiritual joy should arise spontaneously. You're not like faking or forcing it out, yeah? You're contemplating impermanence, suddenly you feel this joy or happiness. And once we are done with the hairs, right? So we are going to notice on this ego, this clinging, this becoming, right? This sense of self. Whether it's increased, that means egoistic, selfish, or reduced, being more and more selfless. And the next part of the body we're going to think is the nails, or your fingernails and your toenails. So before you apply a right thought, or what kind of emotion, what kind of sense of ego do we have? And then we're going to wish all the nails well and happy. And all these nails are subject to birth and death. When they grow long, they collect dirt, they discolor, they go through wear and tear, scratches, cracks, and they even chip off. Yeah? Every time you scratch something hard, some of the nails, they also drop off. So if a person were to be mindful of impermanence all the time, right, they should be able to maintain this calm and peace and not let this desire arise. If let's say desire do arise again, and you need to rework, and then we talk about 7 factors of enlightenment, and the joy reappear again, when the desire is reduced, or like chain reaction. So if let's say no joy arise, never mind. That means you maintain your calm and peace. Yeah. Okay, and the next part of the body we're going to think is the teeth, or the teeth in our mouth, and we're going to wish them well and happy. And all these teeth are subject to birth and death. So they change in shape and size, they discolor, turn yellowish, turn brown, turn black, decay, and tooth cavities, they grow holes, they get shaky, and eventually they fall off. And then we can ask ourselves, are these teeth truly self? And the next part of the body we are going to think is the skin. And the skin that surrounds the body from head to toe. We are going to wish all the skin well and happy. So in doing any form of meditation, I would always recommend loving kindness first, yeah? Because if a person don't do loving kindness and straight away think of, oh, the skin decaying and rotting, then you'll be thinking, oh, I want to see a dermatologist, I want to see a doctor, right? And worry of this problem, that problem, right? So you need a calm and peaceful mind first with loving kindness. And it's easier to accept the truth. Then we can start to think of the birth and death of the skin. The skin will get oily, sweaty, dirty, and they wrinkle when it's old, and they crack when it's dry, and all kinds of skin problems from skin irritation, rashes, boils, pimples. And our dead skin, they follow. Every day, lots of skin dropping off. So this is practicing detachment through the mind sense door from thinking, yeah, or visualizing. And the next meditation routine we are transiting to is the breath meditation. So instead of visualizing the body, we are going to feel the breath. So now we are isolating the attention to one small point below the nostril, above the upper lip. So we're just going to feel the in and out breath that is contacting the skin and that area below the nostril. There's no need to feel your windpipe, your diaphragm, your lungs. Just one small point. We are actually trying to achieve one-pointedness of the mind. So the smaller the area, the better. And no need to control the breath. Let your in and out breath be natural. And also no need to force the mind to be at that spot. So we use loving kindness, yeah? So when we inhale, we wish the breath well. Whenever there's an exhalation, we wish the breath happy. So the mind is always thinking well, happy, well, happy. Make friends with the breath. Right? We're not controlling the breath, we're not training the breath. We're actually training the mind to be at peace with the breath. Once the mind is at peace with the breath, then we can introduce the other thought, impermanence. So in inhale and exhale, there is always this rising and passing away. So what is rising and passing away? If you want, you can, it's just a guideline, you can observe the four elements. So the earth element is the heart and softness, the density of the air. So when you breathe in and out, any change of density, then there's birth and death of the earth element. So this fits with the definition of birth in the Paticca Samuppada Vibhanga Sutta, analysis of the dependent origination. Right? Then if we observe the let's say the fire element, there's the heat, warm and cold. There's the birth and death of the fire element if there's any change of temperature. And if we breathe in and out, there's a change in the speed of the air or the breathing rate. Then there's a birth and death of the wind element. And the water is the moisture, right? The humidity, moist or dry. So there's no need to purposely create any sensation. I will just be a passive observer. Whatever arises, we just take note of that sensation and observe how it transforms, how it changes. So the more change we observe, the better. We cannot, in my routine, we don't idle and stop thinking. Yeah? Once there's no thinking, it's very easy for all the other thoughts to arise. All the, we call it wrong thoughts, unskillful thoughts. So the mind can be restless, can be worrying, can be daydreaming. Right? So there's constant effort of right thought involved. So when we're thinking of impermanence, then we have to remind ourselves of impermanence all the time. So it's linked to the evidence that we observe. Whatever sensation, there's any change, then we keep on noting this impermanence. So when a person keep on practicing, observing impermanence, then the mind will detach and it will settle down. So the settling of the mind is actually ceasing of this desire. That's why it settled down. So we can observe how far can the mind settle down? How far can it cease? Where is the starting point? Yeah? So when the mind is so-called at this one-pointedness, the 6 sense bases are still there. Yeah? The eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, your organs are still there. Right? So when, after this session, when you go out to work, you go out to interact with your family and friends, your eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind is also there. Yeah? The 6 sense bases, the 5 aggregates are still there. So meditation is not about just sitting, it's about every moment, right contemplation, right thoughts. It's not that when we sit down, then we have these things to handle, right? These 5 aggregates and 6 sense bases to handle. Once you stop meditating, then all these 5 aggregates disappear. No, they still are there. So this is baby steps. You're training to detach the mind when it's at a small area. Now we're going to enlarge the area, increase the difficulty, yeah, to the whole body. Now you're going to feel the whole body from head to toe, right? So in the increased area, can the mind still practice detachment? Or is the mind reacting to the sense contact? And whatever sensation you feel in whichever part of the body, you take note of impermanence. And if you want to make it more challenging, then we lift the travel restrictions of the mind, so we don't fix to any boundary, we don't focus on any particular spot. We let the mind travel freely, let it autopilot. So this mind can travel freely through your eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So we are not deliberately directing the mind in a particular sense door. Right? We just take a step back and let it operate naturally by itself. You're just something like cameraman, yeah? And the mind or this attention is something like a wild animal. So it's like a documentary film. So you're just filming this, observing this wild animal, this mind. So to be able to keep track of this attention, right? Call this real-time contact tracing of the mind. We use again the four elements. As long as you can feel the sensation of the four elements, then your attention is there. The Nama, Rupa, mind, matter is together. The five aggregates is 5 in 1, is always there. So when the mind is running around, then this would be a good time to sort of fully experience we call dependent origination. Okay, so you take note currently where is your attention now? And when it jumps to another place, right, this attention when it jumps to another place, then jumping is a formation. That is a sankhara, mental formation. And that attention is basically your consciousness, your awareness. Either you're aware from hearing, that's your ear consciousness, or you're aware with your, I don't know, yeah, your sense of touch, maybe a contact with the seat, for example. Right? So there are various sense consciousness. And through that, whatever contact you have, then feelings arise. You may find that attention pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So basically, the five aggregates is always operating in this manner. And if we do not practice detachment, that means our normal response will be to react. Any pleasant feeling, we will react with greed. And it will lead to all the clinging and the suffering. And any unpleasant feeling, we will react with aversion or hatred we want to get rid of. The mind will be unease. Again, a different clinging. Some people cling anger the whole day. Yeah? Clinging is like as though there's no better emotion. So they cling anger the whole day, so it becomes their personality, become an angry person, and then followed by all the suffering. Right? So the other option, the better option is to practice detachment. So when we have sense contact, we have feelings, then we apply either the two right thoughts. First is either loving kindness or impermanence. This is the way to reduce this craving. So when we see something from our eyes or hear something from our ears, right, when there's a new volition, no birth involved, no conception take place. So this is the we call the here and now dependent origination. They can observe and investigate here and now. You don't have to wait for the past or wait for the future. So it fits with the 6 qualities of the Dhamma to be seen here and now without delay. You have to wait until your dying moments to understand what is this rebirth linking consciousness, or go back to the past to see the moment of conception. And eventually, with that calm and detached mind, that self is a form of concentration from detachment, from insight. Right? If you understand impermanence and you let go and reach peace, right? That is calm or concentration through wisdom. Right? So using that calm and peace, then you wish all beings well and happy. Radiate this loving kindness in all directions. So now is multitasking, how to direct the mind without suffering, without clinging, without any stress. Can you enlarge the area of the mind boundlessly without any strain or any attachment? So try to maintain this boundless loving kindness as long as possible. This is a bit like recharging. There's some samatha element involved, and also both samatha and vipassana. So before we conclude, just another gentle reminder from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. If a person were to be mindful of this boundless loving kindness, be it standing, sitting, walking, or lying down, then this is the highest conduct. And with that in mind, we can gently open our eyes, physically and the meditation, but mentally is still meditating all around, yeah? Okay. So we end the session. Any other issues or problems you all want to raise? No, all okay?
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, Vanti. Continuing my question just now, right? Regarding the sense of self, does it mean that we are no longer attached to the body? Also, if the
Okay, sense of self can appear even outside the body, doesn't have to be within the body. So the clinging should reduce, which is correct. But if a person doesn't practice detachment, they can, let's say they are always virtually on the screen the whole day and they care less about the body. So they can be attached to, I don't know, maybe they are, maybe let's say a video gamer, right? They can be attached to the video games. They don't care about the body. They don't eat. They don't sleep. They can play the whole day. But they're attached, very attached to the character on the screen, right? So no, their video game character dies. They still upset. They cry and and whatever. No, yeah, get frustrated. So attachment doesn't have to be the body. So we're talking about the level of defilements and with regard to the mind. So wherever our attention is placed, if it is to the body, if it is still a very attached person, then yes, then there's attachment to the body. If it's attention is paying attention to somewhere else, can be the news, or some fellow win or lose the election, then you get upset or happy with it, or some football team win or lose, then you get upset or happy. Yeah, so this is attachment externally. All right. So we are training the in-between process, the reducing of desire.
okay, thank you, Vanti.
Okay, no problem. Any Facebook question. Bhante, is the rebirth of a person constantly changes from male to female and vice versa, depending on the karma, or depends on the present of the Gandhava? Thank you very much for the Dhamma sharing. This I do not know. It's a very metaphysical question. I really do not know. So I would say, I would play safe and say, depending on the karma. Yeah. So hopefully that answers the question. Okay.
Bhante.
Yeah.
I want to ask about this meditation. I think when I was following the meditation, on 2 occasions I felt very itchy throat. My throat was very itchy and I had to cough.
Okay.
So what's your advice? We have to really cough it out, isn't it? Before I can.
Correct. Yeah.
Nothing else, isn't it? Just that cough. Pardon?
Eventually, right mindfulness should apply in all your daily activities. Right. So even if you have a cough, you cough. Yeah. You eat, you eat. So while moving around, it's about applying detachment. When we are paying attention to the throat, right, and of itchiness, are we overreacting? No, is it full of greed or hatred? So you have to know your state of mind. Yeah.
Oh. I wouldn't know, right? How do I know that greed or hatred? But I did, and all these things didn't come in.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to practice more.
Yeah.
Okay. This one has to do with level of we call it a bit of circular mindfulness. A bit about detecting emotions and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Your greed and hatred. Yeah.
Is it connected to, like, every time you pray, emotion comes, So yeah, what's your advice on that?
Yeah, then it's good to take note and observe its arising and passing away. Yeah, there's the intensity of emotion will change all the time. It's not like 24 hours it's there, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So at least it's experiential.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, any other questions? Okay, if there's no question, then we can conclude the session. Okay, so this is the closing chant, the dedication of merits. Akasata ca bhumata devanaga mahidika punyam tang anumoditva cirang rakantu lokasasanam etavata ca amhihi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva sabbe bhuta sabbe sata anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Transference of merits to departed. Idam minyatinam hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idam minyatinam hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idam minyatinam hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Aspiration. Imina punya kamena ame bala samagamo. Sata samagamo hotu yavani bana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, and good night. Any announcements from parents?
Nothing, Bante. See you all next week. Bante. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And good
Good
night.
All right, thank
Thank you.
you. See you
Thanks.
and
Thank you,
good night.
Bante.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, Bante. Good night,
No
everyone.
problem.
Bante.